It's my great pleasure to introduce Dennis O'Donnell to you today, our handsome speaker. And known Dennis many, many years. You're a wonderful healer, and we're blessed to have him speaking for us today here. And Dennis O'Donnell has been playing hide and seek with spirit as long as he can remember. He's explored spirits, varied expressions through many traditions, native spirituality, Pentecostal Christianity, yogic sciences, devotional singing and prayer, 12-step spirituality, youthful exuberance, and mature contemplation, or it could be nature contemplation too. And I've found my favorite home in the work and expression of spirit through the religion of spiritualism. Dennis is always looking up. He's very positive and just wanting everyone to have that feel that spirit within them too. It's such a sweet man. And let's welcome warmly, please, Dennis O'Donnell.
Okay, everyone, hi.
Hi.
More people here than I expected on the Super Bowl. I thought I could get away with just wearing my jeans. That's what I did do it. Well, I'm going to, talk on a few different topics today that are going to hopefully weave together. They're going to kind of explain what I've been doing and wrestling with most recently for the last couple of years, especially, I suppose. But when you don't know what you're going to talk about, really, and you're kind of swimming around, you fall back to basics. And so I brought show and tell. Now, this is Wilhelmina Wolf. And my teacher, Reverend Millie Landis, brought this back from one of her journeys and gave it to me. Well, partly because my Indian guide is Winter Wolf. So she figured I'd fall in love easily. The wonderful thing about this, and the reason why she gave it to me, because I don't necessarily always think grand, positive, uplifting thoughts. And Millie knows me well. And unfortunately, I squeezed Wilhelmina Wolf one too many times. So she doesn't make that talking noise that she used to make. If you squeeze her, she would say, Wilhelmina Wolf, think only good thoughts. And Millie was right. I do need this, and I squeeze her a lot. And so I brought her. So the topic, I guess, mostly is think only good thoughts. Let's do that. All right. And just so I know that other little. Okay. All right. Good. All right. So I guess I'll kind of just quickly be a little vulnerable and tell you kind of in a snapshot what I've been doing recently. After the pandemic and after this girlfriend dissolved and after all the great plans and all the possible, the world was my oyster opportunities, they all just frittered away. And I found myself kind of sitting back on my haunches thinking, well, I either need to get a real serious job and get, back in the saddle on the job thing, or I needed to get real creative and blessed because, paying rent without working is not in my blessing bucket. So I ended up, as many of you know, I have some friends, a church I've connected with and friends up there for like 35 years in Valley Center, and they have an Essene retreat center. And it's like 300 acres of pristine nature. And they invited me to move up there. And so I moved my camper up there, and my camper is basically literally at the bottom of like a waterfall. And there's a stream that goes by, and I've got videos of the mountain lion that lives on the land. It's just, you know, if one was to retire and think to themselves, where would one like to go? You would think that taking your camper down by the waterfall and living in nature is like the, you know, like I hit the jackpot. And I suppose I did, but part of me is like, no, this isn't quite right, and what am I doing here? And, you know, I should be able to, you know, have my own condo in Coronado. And so I snivel and whine and moan, and people call me Eeyore, you know. And so, you know, Millie reminds me to think good thoughts, and I try to reel it in. But I've gotten a real concern for the homeless, maybe because I came so close to being one, or thinking I was close to. Or, you know, I had a friend years ago, she told me, I don't know what brought it up, but I must have been talking about fears of being homeless or something. She laughed and she said, "Oh no, Dennis, you'll never be homeless. You've got social skills." Social skills. And I have trouble getting along with everybody. But, okay, took her at her word. And that's worked out to be pretty true. I don't have lots and lots of friends, but probably more than most. And the friends I do have are pretty darn good. And I just thought that going to the Scene Retreat Center and Valley Center sounded a whole lot better than going to South Bend, Indiana. All right. So in Escondido, there is something called the Interfaith Community, what is it? Interfaith Services, which is a collection of churches that got together, and rather than just kind of like individually trying to help the social service needs of the community, they kind of band together and work together, and they're really very, very successful and effective at what they do. They've got homeless shelters that they've built. They've got domestic abuse shelters for women and families. They've got, of course, they feed people every day, and they've got counseling, and they got all the resources and access to all the resources in the county and the community that they can refer people to, and they do a great job of case management and all that kind of stuff. So, I was thinking, my history, I'm really, really, really good with spiritualism, and with people getting close to transition, and I've done some of that hospice counseling kind of stuff, and sitting at the bedside, and I even worked at a funeral home. I'm really good with death. And I was thinking, when I was little, I'd kind of work into that. But that hasn't been happening. I've been drawn more and more into working a little bit with interfaith and looking at the homeless issues and concerns. And now, for you homeless pros here, I'm just learning as I go here. I'm brand new at the little journey and stuff, but the little bit of experience I have had, as you might imagine, talking and interacting and trying to breathe hope into people that have been on the streets for a long time is extraordinarily challenging, and oftentimes heartbreaking and maddening, and it's one step forward and 4 steps back. But anyway, humor me, and when we're done, you pros can instruct me a little bit in what I'm misperceiving. But they have, at Interfaith, something called the Faith-Based Mental Health Academy. And it's not an original idea. There's other organizations throughout the country that have done that. But the idea is how can they bring the mental health community together with the faith communities and churches, and how can those two work together and support each other more. And I took this course, week-long course thing, pretty extensive. And it addresses the issue of stigma a whole lot. And there's the person that ends up being homeless, and I'm so worried because there's so many people now. Everybody's heard that the homeless community is increasingly being comprised, the new homeless, of seniors. A lot of people that are retiring and just can't really float the boat without working. The sadness and the fear. These are not people that have been thinking that they might have to be homeless when they retire and planning on this and getting ready for it. I mean, you want to talk about a traumatic shock. One day you're thinking you've paid your dues, you've worked, you've done everything you were told to do, and the next thing you're kind of like, bereft and don't have a place to stay. And homelessness is a real, it's a fast ticket to, despair and to mental illness. Fast ticket. I mean, it doesn't take very many, we're talking weeks, months. So the stigma that the actual individual might have, they're overwhelmed with shame. They're overwhelmed with feeling that they have no options. The few people they have reached out to for whatever reasons haven't been able to help them. It puts them in a real bad spot. Shame and guilt and the feeling of being judged by people. The feeling, apparently, it's so hard to live with that feeling that you just assume just hide under a rock somewhere and not even have to, So then we talked a little bit in the class, they talked about the stigma that families have, and families, they don't really know what to do with mental illness. So, most of them feel guilty, what caused it, what did we do in our family to contribute to this? Or, they're feeling shame and they're embarrassed and they're burdened and they just kind of would prefer if the problem just kind of went away. And so how to help families confront their own feelings about homelessness and about mental illness. And the last few weeks, what's it been, 2 weeks or something? All the changes that are going on now too. I mean, there's all kinds of other communities that are having, displacement and trauma, and it's heartbreaking to hear things about, parents afraid to send their children to school in case they get snatched up and, deported or something. Anyway, there's lots of things going on. Everywhere you look, it's kind of like a big uncertainty and a little scary, and society is being challenged more. So, and then the other thing, churches themselves have a lot of stigmas that they kind of bring to it. A lot of churches, the idea about being a center for opening their doors and embracing the needy it's good on the brochure, but when push comes to shove, in actual fact, they're a social club. And you're welcome to come if you kind of believe the way we do, and if you behave. If you believe and behave, then you can belong. And try to present the idea to some, and this is not every church or anything, but some communities have different perspectives about things. The idea that why don't we just kind of like, welcome you to come. You don't even have to believe. After you come and hang out for a little while, then you'll believe. And why don't you just come and, you belong if you say you belong. Just just come, keep coming back. And, you know, people will begin to change their behavior on their own because they want to and because they're growing spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and they're feeling the support of the community. And the behavior issue oftentimes takes care of itself. Now, with that being said, I'm not even looking at any of these outlets, which is a good thing. It's good to be able to just talk. It's almost like I think I know what I'm talking about. When I was visiting my friend in South Bend, Indiana, and that's where that University of Notre Dame is, which is like, you know, the Catholic premier theological repository of all things genius and Catholic and religious, and they actually have their own separate department. The McGrath Institute has a faith-based, you know, church community mental health pro. So I called her up and invited myself down for a visit and talked to her a little bit. And the first thing she said to me was, recovery for people with mental illness and homeless, and the recovery, yes, faith, yes, gotta have some faith. And it requires compassion. But the most important thing, the most important thing is science. And, you know, if they need to take some medicine, they take their medicine, and you make sure they keep taking their medicine. You know, and other things that social sciences have, you know, counseling and all that kind of stuff. She was really surprisingly frank in her admonishment that, you know, faith by itself is not going to cut it in many, many cases. So, so what I want to talk about a little bit too is that I have, you know, I mentioned it before, and no surprise, I do deal with kind of a low to medium grade kind of depression my whole life. It's just kind of there. Most of the time it's not debilitating, and I've never ever been one of those kind of people who, you know, doesn't get out of bed. I probably had days where I should have stayed in bed rather than drag it up and looking like I did and go to work and do it. But I have had dips though in the depression a few times, 3 or 4 times in life, where the ability to, the time?
You've got about 5, 7. You got this.
Okay. The ability to choose your thoughts. See, think only good thoughts. That's something you can do if you're healthy. But if you're actually weighed down with an anchor of depression, or if you've got an obsessive compulsive thing that is causing you to, you know, do actions or think thoughts, or if you've got a disease that, you know, some neural loop or some, you know, portal is broken and there's a voice telling you, you know, what to think. It's really hard to manage your thoughts effectively when you've got a mental illness. And I've been on the edge of that a few times, and I don't like it. And it requires some, and I've been blessed because I've known what to do and been able to address these things. But a lot of people, and when you get into that mode, it's easy to stay there. It's like really hard to, people think that, you know, why do they continue to choose to be homeless? It's not because they continue to choose to be homeless. They are helpless. They're not able to kind of like get their mind and change their thoughts and you know, get a positive attitude enough to think that it's going to be any different and get up and you're kind of helpless. If you can't manage your thoughts, if you can't choose a good thought, yeah, you're gravely impaired and helpless. And so that's where, of course, we come in as spiritualists and church communities and people that are what I like to call, we're all emissaries of God. And so reaching out and building bridges and you know, building bonds with people. And I do love spiritualism so much because Reverend Millie's church I was connected with for 30 plus years. But really any church I've ever seen, this church here is so wonderful. It's an attitude of inclusion and not exclusion. And I gotta admit, I saw Reverend Millie one time not open her heart and welcome somebody in. And Reverend Millie has quite a little face. This particular individual was kind of a wild-eyed, long-haired. He dressed in white. He fancied himself to be a yogi or something, but he liked to go around with no shoes on. And Millie just required, you got to have shoes on if you come to church. Yeah, and so, but other than that, all comers, you just come as you are and hang out. So Millie's way of welcoming and inviting people and putting them at ease, she would do things like, she would say, you know, dear, God hardly even notices when you've been bad. And that's reassuring when you kind of know. And a lot of people, they come to, especially spiritualist churches, like they don't want to come to church here because their dead brother's going to tell stories on them. And Millie would say, every time at messages, she would say, the angels will never tell anything that you don't want to have told. If there's something private or something, the angels are not going to blab that out. It's not gonna, you don't have to worry about your secrets. So her way of being open and having empathy and she had compassion and oftentimes she was kind of, she was a woman, so she could do this easily, an old woman. She could grab you and hold your hand. And I had some people that we knew that were a little unnerved by this woman just holding their hand. A man in particular I'm thinking of that didn't like that. But and then Millie and spiritualists, not only do we bring some compassion and some empathy and have our own reason and knowledge for knowing that there's hope and that we're not alone in life in this world. There's always an angel band and guides and teachers and loved ones that are with you. And if you keep coming back, it doesn't take very long for you to begin to have your own experiences and to know this for yourself. But fortunately, especially if there's plenty of God stories going on all around that people are sharing within the community, and being able to listen and to see God stories and miracles unfolding in other people's lives. Well, I've seen many people come rather dubious, but they keep coming back anyway just to see what's going to happen. And the energy is so wonderful and uplifting, and everybody's friendly, and they actually are greeted and welcomed, and yeah, they think that it's a good thing. Maybe come Sunday, maybe come Wednesday service. Soon they're coming to classes and things. Now, I don't know where the quote is, but I heard in the midst of this homeless thing that some kind of study was done, and people that have a history of going to a church function, a service or a church function 2 or more times a week, they just don't seem to be ones that end up being homeless on the street. It's amazing, but if you got a community that you're connected to and that know you, and I guess that's where the social skills come in or something. I went to church every time I could, 4, 5 times a week. Sometimes I spent a lot of time with Millie. So,
What are you doing?
this time? Okay. All right. Do I have a conclusion? I want to just finish up with, just so you get something really authentic and something you can take home confidently. White Eagle, one of his little writings, he's talking about those of you who are striving after spiritual truth must learn continually to project from your heart and your higher mind thoughts of goodwill, brotherhood, and love. Always see good in the ascendant, even if it appears comparatively infinitesimal. See good among, or see good arising, no matter what the situation may be. Always project the light of Christ from your soul. Let your thoughts of love and goodwill be continually broadcast upon the ether. You can never know how great this will be your service. Let your higher mind dominate your life, and you will help many others along their path back to God. So really, the trick is think only good thoughts.